I've been rewatching a bunch of Cowboy Bebop as of late, half because it's been a long while since the last time I had done so, and half because I wanted a good frame of reference for all of the inevitable comparisons to the new Netflix adaptation of Bebop when it comes out later this month. It was in prep for those comparisons, which, looking at the trailer footage, will be many. I sat down and tried to figure out and condense my thoughts as to what I believed Cowboy Bebop is. Like, what was the narrative purpose of the show, and what would be the baseline that I would use for comparing the new adaptation to it? I did that because I figured, without a baseline, my thoughts might not be focused. I might get this feeling of dislike from the new series, but not be able to explain why other than, it's too different. Which isn't a fair thing to say on any series by itself. Especially because I want it to be different. Like, don't get me wrong, I want to watch this new Bebop and feel like I am watching Bebop, but I most certainly do not want to watch a live-action series that just directly uses the anime as a storyboard, right? I don't want a live-action series that just makes me wonder why I am watching that, and not just, the original. The baseline that I came up with, one of the major themes of Bebop, is easily summarized by the entirety of that show's episode 11, Toys in the Attic. So today, I wanted to take a quick look at that one episode and, in effect, the show as a whole. But first, a quick word from our sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by the good people over at 11 Arts, in promotion of the upcoming release of Gintama, the very final. You know Gintama, right? That's the 700 plus chapter manga that's been adapted into over 350 anime episodes across 10 seasons of comedy since 2006. The show's been around a while. It's been on the top of Mal for most of that. It is a juggernaut that has just been this constant presence during my time as an anime fan, and soon it will be over. Unless they pull like a Dragon Ball and just wait 18 years and come back and just keep going. Gintama, the very final, will be released theatrically across the United States and Canada with both subtitled and dubbed versions. Both of those versions were released on the 21st of November, with sub-only screenings on the 22nd of November. Canadians, however, for whatever reason, get this wonderful advantage this time around, and our showings start on the 19th. It's an advantage because we get it first, but a disadvantage because now actually there is less time to see if there are showings available near you and grab tickets. A worthy trade, however. Speaking of, there will be links down in the description to find a theater near you to watch the glorious end of this massive series. Well, not really the actual end, because it's already aired in Japan. It's been over since January, technically. But for us, this is it. The end. Buy tickets. Episode 11 of Cowboy Bebop is, on the surface, a homage to a bunch of different sci-fi tropes, from like Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey to Ridley Scott's original Alien. The crew of the Bebop is in the middle of wandering through space between jobs, bored and mostly broke. The episode doesn't have any bounty marks or targets, and it takes place entirely on the ship. Faye cheats Jet out of his belongings through a dice game. Spike tries to roast some food with a flamethrower, and Ed is just, Ed. After losing all of his clothes to Faye, Jet goes into a storage bay, possibly to search for some clothes to wear, but it is in there, near an old refrigerator, that he gets bit by something. He didn't see what, but something larger than a rat, he claims, bit him on the back of the neck, and soon a giant purple wound begins to fester there. Later, while soaking in a bath, Faye also gets bitten on her leg. At several points during the episode, we, the audience, have seen what appears to be a point of view from whatever this creature is as it scurries through the ship. Even the dog, Ein, is not immune to its attacks. So Spike gears up, and with a large net and one of those motion detector-y thingies from Alien, he heads out to rid the ship of whatever this creature is. He finds it, traps it, and burns it into a crisp. But it's in that moment, a scent makes him hungry, and he remembers. He remembers food that he had bought over a year prior and stored in a fridge in the back of the storage bay. He remembers that he left all of that food to sit and fester for the last year, an eldritch horror of remaining foodstuffs that has led to this moment. Doing the only thing that he can think of, he jettisons the fridge and whatever still lurks within out into the dark vastness of space. As for the creature, well, Ed finds it and eats the thing in one bite, because that's Ed. That's what Ed does. Now, throughout the episode, each of the major characters relays to us through narration a lesson that they have learned throughout their life. Don't try to get rich quick or live at the expense of others. The survival of the fittest. If you see a stranger, follow him. And probably the most relevant lesson to all of Bebop: don't leave things in the fridge. That last lesson not only plays an important role for the narrative of this episode, as it was Spike's past choices that led to this creature's awakening, but it also serves as the lesson most of the cast needs to learn and relearn throughout their personal arcs. It is the lesson that is this show at its core. Spike spends the majority of the series, in a sense, running from his past, from what he left behind in the fridge. His former relationship with Vicious haunts him constantly throughout the series until its conclusion, and his more romantic relationship with a character named Julia is a constant memory he can't shake. But he never deals with his past prior to the show. He puts those feelings and relationships away, locked in the attic, to be forgotten until they inevitably resurface and unexpectedly leaving him to deal with the consequences. But it's not just Spike. Jet, too, has a past he can't let go of. His prosthetic arm is a reminder of the past he can't seem to shake, one that he almost doesn't want to shake at times. Jet keeps moving forward like time has stood still, like he has put his past in the fridge and believes it's still there, just how he left it, until, of course, confronted by it, forcing him to come to terms with the fact that even if he has planted himself in the past, others have moved on. Faye was quite literally sealed away in a fridge for years. Then when she's released, she spends so much time trying to ignore her past that she left behind, until once again confronted by it, only then to become obsessed by who she was and who she now is. Even as early as episode 3 does this theme of not letting your past just sit there and fester exist within the show. In Symphony for the Devil, Spike meets a boy named Ren, who really isn't a boy at all. He's a 60-year-old man trapped through an accident in this body that never ages, never gets older. Time literally stands still for him, and his past remains his present, until Spike releases him from this curse. He seems happy in that moment, and Spike witnesses this and doesn't have it click. Not yet. It's only episode 3. Still plenty of show for Spike to learn things. Like, the only character really immune to any of this is Ed. Ed's character is one that, by their very nature, doesn't hold on to any baggage from the past. Ed had a shitty childhood and neglectful parents, sure, but for some reason, none of that affects Ed in the same way that the past of the other characters affects them. Ed just pleasantly moseys on through life without a care in the world. Even at the end of this series, Ed is not emotional when they leave the Bebop. They just go. Ed moves on, leaving all attachments behind. Ed doesn't leave things in the fridge, which makes it all the more fascinating that it's Ed who deals, in the end, with this space creature. There are many things that you can take away from watching Cowboy Bebop. There are many references to music alone. Music alone we could spend hours talking about. There are references to pop culture, to literature, to so many things. But it's this one lesson seemingly reserved for a single episode just before the midpoint of the show that permeates through the entirety of the rest of it. Even beyond, like, this is still prominent in the film. This is one of the things that you can't remove from Bebop and still have it feel like Bebop, which then in essence, makes it something that any adaptation, any continuation of Bebop from here forward needs to keep in mind. It doesn't need to be obvious. You don't need to blatantly have characters walk through being like, oh, I have a tragic backstory. You don't need to do that. Adds the example of how you can get away with not having it at all. But it's still something that needs to be present. It's something that needs to exist. And especially considering that there's going to be a decent chunk of the new live-action Bebop that recreates, for lack of a better word, the story of the show, even if that's not the majority of what it does. It needs to be able to do this right. Now, I am not a time traveler or a person of the future as you might be, depending on when you were watching this video, but I can tell you without having seen that show that if it doesn't nail this one thing, it won't feel like Bebop. Like, you can have the fancy fights, you can have the sci-fi shooting battles and flying around in the swordfish. You can have characters with the correct names, correct attitudes, even the correct voices, perhaps, as the Japanese dub of the show most definitely will have. But if you don't have this underlying thing that the characters need to deal with, what basically, for lack of a better word, drives their entire character arcs forward, you're not gonna have much. That's kind of my bare line success for anything Bebop moving forward, is that it has this element, it portrays it well, and it's able to not let that drag the whole show down. You need to be able to deal with that seriousness, and then also just have the peppy attitude that these characters are known for.
I love the kind of woman that can kick my ass.
They are broken people, and that's why we like them. They are broken, they are damaged, but eventually they move on. It is just this moment in where they are learning how to do that can showcase to us, the audience, how we might be able to do similarly with our own lives. And it's up to us to decide whether or not we want to take any of that with us, or whether we want to take our own pasts and put them back in the fridge. Thank you for watching this little digression. I'll be putting links down in the description for you to make sure you can watch or hopefully rewatch Cowboy Bebop, whichever is your prerogative, of course. Thank you once again to 11 Arts for sponsoring this video, and again, those links for Gintama the Final are also down below. And lastly, a thank you to all of my patrons who make videos like this possible. I can't do this without you. Your names are all right here, and you guys are simply amazing. And of course, a very special thank you to patrons Hector Montemayor, Omar Showman, Ryfen Bonaparte, City Yamako, Sergeant Nemo 1, and Wago221 for being especially awesome. Until next time, watch more anime, specifically Bebop, and stay frosty.